We live in a world our ancestors would barely recognize. Around the globe, the impact of human ingenuity is now everywhere. We push back the limits of our planet at speeds, depths, and heights that would have left our forebears breathless. Driving all these achievements is humankind's extraordinary gift for invention. Through genius and inspiration, we created exceptional solutions to complex problems, from the everyday to the spectacular, some good and some not so good. This series celebrates the million ways our great inventions have transformed our world.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It tends not to be in plain sight, but it makes many other inventions possible.
It's a brilliant invention, not very old, and yet it's already completely changed our world.
It's through them that we can stay in touch with others, keep ourselves informed, and indulge our gaming urge.
Our entire lifestyle would be impossible without this groundbreaking invention.
It's constantly being improved to meet the needs of future devices. But could it also solve our present and future climate issues? Already today, it enables eco-friendly mobility for people and goods alike. And for the past 200 years, it's been supplying energy to us and our appliances, the battery. Our everyday routines would be unthinkable without batteries. From morning to nighttime, they make our lives easier.
A cordless shaver allows me to stay trim, but also not have to go to the barber every couple of weeks.
I am a little obsessed with these cleaning robots. They can just trundle along around your kitchen. Sometimes cats sit on them. And I don't know, it's almost like having a little pet.
The electronic device that I find special and surprisingly practical is the battery-powered speaker. Because wherever you are, you can basically be surrounded by the music that you love.
Batteries catapulted us into the mobile age. They power navigation systems, mobile phones and the like, with a seemingly unlimited supply of energy. We'd be lost without them.
I hate cables more than anything, so a world without batteries would just be this cable hell.
I think it's quite hard to imagine a world without batteries because batteries are everywhere.
In how many areas of our lives these kind of little magic sources of energy allow us to kind of not just have access to an easier life, but in many cases access to safety. They're such a common part of our lives that we almost don't notice that they're there. We take them for granted.
That's also why we rarely stop to think about batteries. They are everywhere, but largely unseen. We don't think of them as running our lives because they're in so many of the devices we use every day, some of which we probably couldn't live without.
Personally, I simply cannot live without my mobile phone. It keeps me connected, it lets me know where I am, what I need to do. It completely almost dictates my life.
And I think probably I'm like millions of people across the globe who really would struggle to get about their day-to-day lives without it.
And mobile phones are only the visible tip of the iceberg. There are many other battery-operated apparatus that also shape and improve our world today. Batteries spur technological progress. But where does a battery's power come from? Electricity occurs in nature as lightning storms and magnetism. People began to tap into this power some 100 years ago. Electricity as a power source reaches cities and homes of the industrialized world. At night, the Western urban centers become islands of light. And architectural design changes too. Penthouse homes become chic thanks to electric elevators. City skylines tower upwards.
Electricity is almost certainly the single most important transformation of human life in the late 19th, 20th centuries. It utterly revolutionised every aspect of human life, at home, at work, in leisure, and beyond.
In the 1920s and 30s, private homes are connected to the power grid. It completely transforms daily life. Electricity catapults the world into the modern age. Vacuum cleaners, refrigerators, washing machines, and other appliances make their way into people's homes and facilitate their lives. They may look different today, but we can't do without them. In the US, celebrities, including the future US President Ronald Reagan, then a well-known actor, appear in ads touting innovative uses of electricity.
And electricity helped us in all these dedicated men and women.
Without electricity, there can be no prosperity and no American way of life. That's what the message boils down to. Power companies like GE, General Electric, become monopolists in the marketplace. In the 1930s, Hollywood actress Bette Davis also appears in a film promoting GE's achievements in the age of electricity. Coffee machines, washing machines, and dishwashers are indispensable time-saving household aids. These appliances unburden homemakers in the Western world.
Heat water, it would have taken, forever to sort of cook or bathe children or clean. All of these things would have been so difficult. So, the idea that electricity comes in and now women are able to focus on more important things. They're able to kind of see themselves in society in a different way, partly because they have the time to do that. So the new role of women and their entry into working life would have been, in some ways, much more difficult without electrification.
Indeed, with less time spent on household chores, women can take up paid employment. They rush into the job market. Women take their rightful place in offices and factory floors. It's the first step towards equal rights, and the big cities lead the way. This kind of progress comes later to the rural areas, where it also takes longer to build a power grid. Doing without electrical appliances is, however, not an option. So where does electricity come from, if not from power sockets? Alessandro Volta already invents the first modern battery to produce an electric current in 1800, consisting of stacked discs of zinc and copper. Brine-soaked cardboard pieces layered between them allow electric voltage to be conducted.
What a crazy idea Volta had. He figured out how to generate electricity chemically. In his research, he discovered that certain metals put together can produce electricity.
Batteries are nothing more than a chemical reaction between two different metals. They're brought into contact and give up electrons. These move through electrolytes and create electric voltage. If you connect a device to this circuit, it can exploit the energy.
Perhaps the battery wasn't invented by Volta, but by someone else 2 millennia earlier. In 1936, near Baghdad, archaeologists found a clay pot with a copper cylinder and an iron rod inside it. Since then, scientists have been speculating whether this could be the world's oldest battery. Experiments show that theoretically it could have worked, but it's highly controversial whether it was used as one.
In the 19th century, the modern battery becomes an invisible driver of social and technical progress in many aspects of life. The first thing it does is to revolutionize communication and intelligence.
200 years ago, when the first serious daily and weekly newspapers are being produced, they're dependent upon news travelling thousands of miles in real time. So you open a newspaper in England in the early years of the 19th century, and what you're able to read about are things that happened weeks, even months ago across the world.
Information thus far transported by ship or stagecoach could now be transmitted by telegraph. Since the electric grid is not yet fully developed and thus unreliable, it's powered by batteries. This expensive technology puts telegrams out of reach for most, at first.
Telegrams were initially only used by governments, diplomats, or the military to exchange information, and by news agencies and their correspondents. In fact, journalism changed very much due to the new technology. Now the English newspaper reader could read about an event that happened in Australia the day before. That was a true media revolution.
The battery-powered telegraphs also unleash a revolution in shipping. By installing radio stations aboard ships, these can now contact the outside world at any time. A new branch of the tourism industry takes root.
Battery-powered radio technology has completely revolutionized the tourism industry for cruise ships, because before we had radios on boats, then traveling by boat across the open ocean was incredibly dangerous. And I mean, if you think about the Titanic, if that didn't have a radio on board, then probably everybody would have died, because even those lucky enough to get into a lifeboat would have ended up being adrift in the freezing cold Atlantic Ocean.
Acting as an invisible impulse generator, the battery accelerates processes in global trade too. Thanks to the telegraph, Paris or Moscow-based financiers can now invest in New York's Wall Street. And the next technological breakthrough is just around the corner. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell secures the rights to his invention, the telephone. It too runs on batteries. Only 5 years later, all the major US cities can boast a telephone network. By 1910, there are some 10 million phones. Switchboards are set up all over the world.
We grew up with telephones and partly with mobile phones. Anytime we want, we could just pick up a phone. But 100 years ago, it was completely different. There were opening hours, even for telephones. The calls were switched by the office, which was obviously not occupied all around the clock. So the caller had to wait until the switchboard operator came back to work.
This technology creates jobs for women. In 1897, there are almost 4,000 female telephone operators in Germany. By 1901, Great Britain's female operators number over 22,000. Initially, it had been men who connected the calls.
It actually sounds like a cliche, but in fact, women were hired as telephone operators because their higher pitch voice was better transmitted on the early lines. The transmission quality was not as good as it is today.
Landline phones bound users to a specific location. Mobile communication technology didn't emerge until the 1980s. First, mobile phones are introduced and calls can now be made whenever and from wherever you wish, thanks to batteries. Unwieldy at first, the devices take a while to establish themselves in everyday life.
Hello?
Barely portable in the early days, they're often used for clowning around.
Yes, hello. Yes, it's for you.
30-minute calls were possible, but only after charging the phone for 10 hours. It wasn't until the 90s that cell phones become a commercial success.
I still remember my first mobile phone. It was a Nokia 3210 and I was 16, I think. Would send loads of text messages because talking on a mobile phone at the time was far too expensive and my parents didn't want me racking up a huge bill.
Over the years, the mobile devices evolve, getting both smaller and more powerful. In 2007, a whole new class of mobile phone is launched onto the marketplace.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone, an iPod.
The audience hangs onto Steve Jobs' every word as he unveils the iPhone in 2007. Basically, a small computer. And because of its multi-use functionality, it quickly becomes the nerve center of our lives. Jobs gives an engaging demonstration. Using the map feature, he finds the closest coffee house and places a crank call to treat his audience members to a beverage, all with the same device.
Good morning, Starbucks and how can I help you?
Yes, I'd like to order 4,000 lattes to go, please. No, just kidding. Wrong number. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay.
This little engineering marvel causes a stir. Everyone wants one, and the competition steps up its game. The age of the smartphone has dawned. Global sales reached 300 million in 2010. By 2019, that number reaches 1.4 billion. A built-in battery powers these new devices as well.
Before I got myself a power pack, I was always worried about my phone running out of juice. I mean, especially when you're out on a hike, for instance, you need your phone to find out where you are and find out when the next train's going to be.
When I didn't have my car key, and usually with my car, you can just use an app to unlock it, but my battery was dying, and then I didn't have a way to get in my car, and that's bad for obvious reasons.
I always try and carry a power bank with me, and it's not just useful for me, but also for friends whose smartphone batteries are maybe getting a little bit older and need to be charged more often. Mine certainly doesn't hold charge for a whole day anymore.
But plug sockets for charging power banks or smartphones are another matter. They are different all over the world.
This shouldn't be a big thing, but I think for anyone sort of, that travels a lot, obviously, it is. For me, kind of, growing up in Canada and then in Cyprus and now living in England, everywhere you go, you have to carry around with you sort of these bulky adapters.
Smartphones are different too, but we use the same social networks on all phone models. They shape our lives today. Political statements are posted on Twitter. We keep up with our friends on Facebook and WhatsApp. Thus, technology is also changing the way in which we communicate. Sometimes nuances are lost in the process.
Someone sends you a text and you send, a kiss at the end, and they send one back and they didn't put a kiss at the end. Well, does that mean they're upset, or or was the kiss something friendly, or was it something more? About 9-10% of communication has to do with what we're saying. The rest is about inflection of voice and about body language.
The battery-powered jack of all trades is an indispensable part of our lives. 2/3 of mobile phone owners can't imagine life without smartphones. Especially young people are addicted to them. A counter-movement has taken shape. The digital detox movement advocates doing without smartphones and social media. It advocates a back-to-the-analog world approach, enjoying nature, walks with the family and friends, or hiking alone. In our day-to-day lives, by contrast, these little devices are omnipresent.
I'm horrified at how much time I spend on it. Even when I think I'm actively making an effort to not look at my phone too much, it's still just at least 6 hours a day.
I have thought about trying to do a digital detox, but I just use my phone so much, I just don't think I could do it.
Digital detox is a trend. In our affluent Western society, we can indulge in the luxury of digital detox, but for me, the benefits of smartphones clearly outweigh the risks and disadvantages.
Today, due to smartphones, batteries are everywhere. Since their invention, batteries have become vital for more and more applications. Batteries are already part of the Norwegian Fridtjof Nansen's spectacular expedition to the North Pole in 1893. He was one of the first to subject this invention to a cold test. The batteries are supposed to light up spotlights at temperatures of -50 degrees Celsius. Nansen ventures onto the perpetual ice with dog-pulled sleds. He hopes to be the first person to reach the North Pole. But the forces of nature plague his expedition. The Arctic ice keeps drifting southward, carrying Nansen and his party away from the North Pole.
With his expedition, Fridtjof Nansen has come closer to the North Pole than any other man before him. Only 368 kilometers separate them from their destination. But it's clear they're not going to reach it. They've got to turn back. The forces of nature are simply stronger than their meticulously planned expedition.
Fridtjof Nansen has no choice but to concede defeat. We must turn back, he notes in his diary. But at least the batteries pass the test. In the coming years, they find their way into more and more devices.
At the end of the 19th century, a Russian immigrant is trying to build up his fortune onto electricity. Konrad Huber buys up patents of all kinds, from electric tie tyres to glowing flower pots. When he's almost broke, a brilliant idea comes to him. He removes the flower pot to find a cylindrical battery which makes a small bulb glow. Right there in his hands is the birth of the flashlight.
In 1898, Hubert obtained a patent for the world's first battery-operated flashlight.
The ever-ready Comet was different from our current flashlights. Hubert named his invention flashlight because that's exactly what it was, a short flash of light, because batteries back then weren't sufficient for any more. Nevertheless, it is of course a revolutionary invention.
We busted an axle!
New York's policemen are also equipped with Hubert's flashlight. After all, they can save lives in an emergency, according to a commercial from the late 1930s.
If we don't, I'll stop her. See that light bobbing around down there?
By sending light signals to the conductor, a flashlight-waving policeman prevents a train accident.
Set in the air!
The battery inside it made this possible.
Well, boys, this flashlight was a lifesaver tonight.
By the late 19th century, batteries also revolutionized a form of medical therapy.
Hysteria becomes a common diagnosis in the 19th and early 20th century. Now, of course, it's not only women that suffer from things like anxiety and problems with sleep, but the term actually comes from the Greek for uterus, right? So this undifferentiated disease pattern is basically said to be something that only women suffer from, and in fact, they suffer from it because they are women.
For centuries, medical practitioners believed that hysteria was caused by the congestion of bodily fluids. The only treatment was to break up this congestion through orgasm. Doctors recommend a horseback ride or journey on a jolting and lurching horse-drawn coach or train. Some physicians massage their female patients to orgasm.
Legend has it that back in the Victorian times, doctors used to massage the clitoris of ladies who were suffering from hysteria. And then when the vibrator was invented, the battery-powered vibrator, this saved the doctor's wrists from all this exhausting manual labor by giving them the same treatment.
In 1883, Joseph Mortimer Granville, an English doctor, introduces the first vibrator, which has since undergone continuous upgrades.
Here, Dad, is your electric shaver, battery powered.
Other portable electrical appliances also undergo technological advancements from the mid-20th century onward and make their way into households. By then, batteries as energy suppliers are a thriving business.
Look here, this portable TV set, no wires, operates efficiently anywhere on battery. Shall we try it?
But it's not just adults who benefit from the battery boom.
Batteries have also revolutionized the toy industry too. Since the middle of the 20th century, more and more electronic toys started being developed, you know, cars that could move themselves, or talking dolls, or dancing cuddly bears, that kind of thing.
New, smaller electric motors and batteries now make interactive toys possible.
It's yours to command with these battery-operated...
The invisible batteries breathe life into them, and battery-operated remote controls direct the motions of cars or little monsters.
Yes, Great Garloo...
As children, we all had our favorite electronic toys.
You're the boss.
I remember as a child, one Christmas, I was given a set of Thunderbirds walkie-talkies, and me and my sister were running around the woods going like, "Can you hear me? Over? Can you hear me? Over?"
My favourite toy when I was a child was a battery-powered jumbo jet model, a 747, which I loved so much.
It's not only children who take immediate delight in electric toys. Dads also love to play with train sets. Toy manufacturers recreate a miniature version of America, down to the last detail. The toys that young and old American children play with are often imported from Japan, the former enemy from World War II. After the war, the Japanese toy industry emerges as the world's dominant player. Rapidly emerging new uses for batteries necessitate more and more of them. Especially in one's favourite toys, they need frequent replacing. Indeed, batteries have an inherent shortcoming. They can only be used once. The solution? Rechargeable batteries. They're invented at the beginning of the 19th century.
The invention of the first rechargeable battery is basically the starting signal for the modern age. Just imagine if we had to constantly change the battery in these devices as we do with things like flashlights or remote controls. They'd be so inconvenient, and we'd be producing so much more garbage containing harmful substances for the environment.
In the early 20th century, hardly anyone is concerned with environmental issues. Newly introduced lead-acid batteries are both practical and reduce costs because they don't need to be replaced as often. Berliners are thrilled to have the world's first trams that run on battery-electric multiple units. Werner von Siemens had already pioneered them in 1879. The two world wars would not have been executable, either technically or logistically, without rechargeable batteries. The new energy storage systems are mass-produced in huge factories for a new superweapon: submarines. While diving, the battery supplies the onboard electronics, the radio control center, and a vital sonar.
The submarine has a transformative effect on naval battles, on the way in which war is fought, both in the First and Second World Wars. The capacity to hide from your enemy, the capacity to emerge suddenly and to attack is something that people in navies had looked for centuries.
These rechargeable batteries are not only deployed in submarines, they're also produced for combat aircraft, radio and radar equipment, and tanks. Battery production plays an important role in the world wars. Historians believe that the German armed forces would have suffered a loss of strike capability had German battery factories been bombed. As it can provide a decisive strategic advantage, the battery becomes an effective weapon during World War II. The ability to spot the enemy in the dark, for example, lets troops continue the battle after nightfall.
In the last days of World War II, the Nazis developed a new wonder weapon, the Vampire. It's a night viewer that can be clamped onto a rifle just like a telescope. A spotlight with an infrared filter helped the soldier to distinguish friend from foe, even in the dark. The shooter, nicknamed Night Hunter, straps the battery onto his back, and then the backpack would weigh a whopping 13 kilograms.
The success story of lead-acid batteries reaches its decisive moment under the radiator hood of automobiles, where they're used as starter batteries. To this day, they continue to work both reliably and cost-effectively.
That's astonishing, and technology that was invented yesterday is already outdated today. But the lead-acid battery has been around for over 150 years. It's extremely rare for such an old technology to still be in use today, almost unaltered for such a long time.
For car batteries, reliability is crucial. In 1950s ads, manufacturers promised customers that their batteries will never let the car owner down at a crucial time. Indeed, there are tricky moments where you have to count on them to work. If a gentleman cannot drive his lady home, he may lose her forever.
I've always had issues with my car batteries, so much so that I keep jump leads in the boot of my car. The only upside is that I've met some really nice and helpful people.
Broken down vehicles are the result of a concrete problem. Batteries perform poorly in cold weather. At below freezing temperatures, the electrochemical processes in a battery slow down because the electrolyte fluid becomes gel-like. Its aggregate state changes, the electrical voltage drops, and the circuit comes to a standstill. This is still a problem today in the coldest regions of Siberia. Car batteries lose 1/3 of their power at -10 degrees. At -20, they lose half. For this reason, vehicles are kept running day and night from October to April in parts of Russia. Sensitivity to the cold isn't their only disadvantage. For most applications, they're simply too large. Especially for small applications, in 1942, Samuel Rubin develops for the US military the tiny ultralight button cell. Subsequently, all Allied mobile devices, including mine detectors, are fitted with button cells.
You need different batteries for different applications. A battery that works for a car doesn't work for a remote control at home. Whilst there's enough space in the bonnet, the remote control should be small and handy.
Size really matters, and it's why inventors have constantly tried to reduce battery size. And over time, batteries have shrunk and become so much more efficient that they can be used in all kinds of different areas.
Innovations are in great demand, especially in the field of medicine. Since the early 19th century, for example, a funnel-shaped tube is used to help people hear. In the 20th century, button cell batteries help with this problem. Since then, battery-powered hearing aids have been capturing the global market. The devices are meant to sit inconspicuously behind the wearer's ear. That's why size is so crucial.
The advent of kind of tiny batteries, the fact that you can't see them very much, means that people feel less, less stigmatized about wearing them, more comfortable. Now, this is a wonderful thing, because when people experience hearing loss, we know actually it can lead to other issues, right? They can become quite socially anxious. They can begin to self-isolate because of this.
Another critical medical device, the pacemaker, also uses button cells. In 1958, the first pacemaker is implanted in a patient in Sweden. The batteries in the early devices last only for a few days or weeks. This necessitates frequent surgery to replace it. But one battery is more durable, the plutonium battery.
Plutonium is an effective way of making a battery last longer, but I don't know if I would really want it in my body. And surely there must be other materials that we can use to make a equally long-lasting but safe battery.
The inventor of the button cell, Samuel Rubin, develops it in the 1950s, the alkaline battery. The world-famous Duracell bunny uses them to drum longer than the others.
My flashlight's almost always on, so I use Duracell batteries.
Mine sits for months, but when I need it, it works.
Other manufacturers, including Energizer and Varta, jump on the bandwagon and produce the new long-life batteries for all kinds of power needs. Sweeping ad campaigns target broad demographics.
A real trade war develops between the two companies, Duracell and Energizer. In the 1980s, they fight the war on the advertising market. Energizer steals Duracell's pink, tirelessly drumming rabbit, which advertises the brand's durable alkaline batteries. The case goes to court. Since then, the pink rabbit has been allowed to drum for Energizer in the USA and Canada, and for Duracell in the rest of the world.
The new alkaline batteries have wide-ranging application prospects. The first generation of this new battery type is developed for Kodak's Instamatic camera. The integrated flash cube eats a lot of electricity and thus needs a powerful battery. This small camera is extremely handy and simple to operate. It takes the market by storm. Other cameras are also run on alkaline batteries, and they make it all the way to the moon. The world witnesses live in 1969 as Neil Armstrong takes his small step onto the Earth satellite, thanks to a battery that even works in space.
Remember, space, the conditions are so different to here on Earth. The challenge was to develop a battery that could withstand high temperature fluctuations, of course, the shocks and impact of takeoff and landing, and they have to be able to work in a vacuum.
Back on Earth, alkaline batteries kickstart a movement that completely changes the way people consume music and media. Music learns to walk. From the 1950s on, more and more portable entertainment systems flood the market. The first transistor radios are marketed in the US in 1954, and people's freedom of movement gets a further nudge when even televisions become portable. And above all, the remote control revolutionizes lives. The first one is rolled out in the US in 1955.
The remote control really was a revolution. Imagine having to actually get up out of your seat every time you want to change a channel on your TV. Hard to imagine nowadays.
But it's Sony's first Walkman, launched in 1979, that takes mobile entertainment to new heights. All of a sudden, people can listen to music anytime and anywhere. Walkmans and cassettes set the tone for an entire generation.
As a teenager, heavy metal was my life, and I would have a small meltdown if I couldn't listen to it, like at least once a day. And so now I had a way of just like listening to it on my way to school, wherever I went.
My parents grew up a time when music either came out of the record player or out of the radio. And think about how my children experience music and the fact that they can just pop things in their ears, and with the flick of their wrist, they can listen to anything in the world. And that's a genuine revolution, not just in how music is appreciated and what sorts of music we can listen to, but just the fact that we experience the world totally differently.
Their technology is so new that Sony takes an unusual approach to marketing the Walkman. Initially, barely 3,000 units are sold. So the Japanese manufacturer dispatches headphone-wearing employees to the streets with Walkmans. It does the trick in arousing the public's curiosity. The new device turns into a runaway bestseller. You can easily spot someone from the Walkman generation because they react with a telling smile when asked about the connection between cassettes and pens. Mixtapes are much better than purchased cassettes. Now, anyone can be their own DJ.
When I was much younger, I used to make mixtapes, and I'd wait for the song to be played on the radio and then hit record, and I'd hope that the presenter wouldn't talk over the song so that I could get a nice, clean track.
And it's not just Walkmans that let you listen to music on the go. In the 80s, the boombox or ghetto blaster also brings music to the streets. Especially in dense urban environments like LA or New York, young people take it to the streets, creating a colourful, lively counterculture that also transforms the music and art scene. Breakdance, graffiti and hip-hop are closely tied to the ghetto blaster. The black youth subculture of America uses rap music to channel their anger about social conditions. This new sound draws attention to their problems, and the ghetto blaster becomes the mouthpiece of frustrated youth.
So the very substance of music is affected by something as small as batteries. Can you imagine the possibility of having, rap and hip-hop without the ghetto blaster? This was a shock to the music industry with these critical lyrics, these dark sounds, this whole new genre of music.
The ghetto blaster becomes the signature feature of this new trend. "1989 saw the emergence of another trend, the pocket-sized Game Boy. With almost 190 million units sold, it's the most successful portable console of all time. Its amazing success draws numerous imitators.
I loved it. It was a handheld electronic gaming thing that I could take everywhere. And it used to drive my mum mad because there wasn't a way to turn the sound off, or at least we couldn't figure out how to do it. And so it was making this awful beeping noise.
The Game Boy requires 4 AA batteries and turns the twin battery pack into a major seller. It lets you play 30 hours of Tetris. This game comes free with every first-generation Game Boy. It marks the beginning of the mobile gaming era. The batteries used to power Game Boys and other devices do, however, have a disadvantage.
An electronic device like your flashlight goes dead, so you check the battery and find that the whole compartment is sticky. The battery's leaked, and in most cases, you have to throw out the flashlight as well.
Lithium-ion batteries don't leak. Lightweight, but particularly powerful, they supply electricity to flashlights, digital cameras, mobile phones, and for a new standard of mobility. Tesla's Roadster sports car debuted in 2008. It's the world's first vehicle to be fully powered by lithium-ion batteries. A full charge, completed in 3.5 hours, provides a range of up to 400 kilometers. The race is on for a new, more eco-friendly generation of cars.
What we want is a safe, clean form of electricity. Cars are one of the biggest single producers of carbon dioxide. Batteries that are capable of sustaining a longer charge will enable cars to become wholly battery operated, wholly battery powered.
Automakers see a growing demand for electric cars and thus increase their investments in battery technology. And policymakers support these efforts. Most motorists are still reluctant to buy a car that is wholly battery-powered. While many want to do their part to help protect the climate by switching to more sustainable technologies, in practice, there are still a lot of hurdles to overcome. Battery manufacturers also need to step up their efforts.
The problem with electric cars is usually the range. What good is environmentally friendly technology if you can't use it to drive your car all the way back home? With gasoline and diesel cars, you just need a few minutes to refuel and then you're straight back on the road. But recharging the battery of an electric car can take hours.
If we want electric cars to be the default type of car that people have, then you need to have an infrastructure as reliable as what we've currently got for petrol-driven cars with all the filling stations.
We were already further along at the beginning of the automobile age. In 1900, the share of electric vehicles in the US reached 38%. This is also down to the fact that there were almost as many charging stations as there were electric cars.
I think it's really astonishing that more than 100 years ago, the development basically was further along than today. If there was one charging station per e-car today, everyone would immediately buy an electric car.
One of the reasons electric cars were so popular back then is because the early gas-powered vehicles had a real drawback. It took fairly long to get them on the road, since they had to be cranked by hand to start. There were incidences of drivers who got run over by their own car during the cranking process. Other car owners were struck by airborne cranks. In 1911, the American Charles Kettering comes up with a solution: a starter battery for the Otto engine. It makes gasoline engines competitive for the first time. This battery ignition system is a runaway success, and electric cars are crowded off the roads.
It's kind of ironic that a battery killed off the early electric cars. With the starter battery, the gasoline engine's greatest problem was solved. Cars no longer needed to be cranked up to ignite the engine. And fuel at the time was cheap, and power grids had not yet been developed, especially in rural areas. No wonder the first hype about the electric car was followed by a 100-year lull.
Of course, e-mobility never died completely. In the 1970s and 80s, these vehicles could be seen again on European roads. But electric mopeds, which are advertised as practical companions for short trips to the bakery or school, remain the exception. even though they are the forerunners of today's e-scooters. On occasion, one also sees cars, small trucks, public transport or boats that are battery-powered.
The technology for electric cars has actually been around for over 100 years, practically as long as the internal combustion engine. But, of course, the batteries back then weren't as good as they are now, and that meant that these batteries were very large and they also needed changing more frequently, and it therefore wasn't an especially cost-effective way.
Electric buses actually pull a large battery trailer behind them. Once empty, the battery goes back to the depot, where it's immediately replaced, which is faster than recharging. Such big and heavy trailers are, of course, impractical. Smaller and lighter alternatives must be found. In the 21st century, the lithium-ion battery is rolled out and e-mobility becomes a viable solution. It's durable, powerful and lightweight. But the batteries must be isolated in boxes because there's one huge drawback. In rare cases, they may explode. To ban this danger to life, experts around the world work feverishly to develop new batteries. The race is on to pioneer groundbreaking advances in battery technology. Research is carried out with various materials. To avoid using cobalt, a harmful metal, researchers around the world are experimenting with apple biowaste, chlorophyll, or other natural substances that they reproduce synthetically. Organic batteries could be the future.
Usually when we think of the word organic, you associate it with food, but if we had batteries that were made out of completely non-polluting organic material, it would be revolutionary.
Sustainability is also key when it comes to electricity generation and storage. The share of renewable energies used all over the world has climbed from 16% in 2010 to 26% in 2019. But the limited storage capacity for energy from wind turbines and solar cells is a big problem. Currently, all batteries worldwide can store less than 10 minutes of the electricity produced. Scientists are trying to create a new, huge storage battery to tackle this problem. One such battery was built in Hornsdale, South Australia. In 2016, 2 tornadoes ripped through the area, causing a huge blackout. The new storage battery could power 30,000 households at short notice during the next power failure. Australians are banking on tried and tested technology for this: rechargeable lithium-ion batteries.
Maybe the lithium-ion batteries can also help us with storage problems. There's this idea of taking old car batteries from trash dumps and using them as storage devices in 10 to 20 years' time. The so-called Second Life project wants to build a large storage battery out of old car batteries. That would kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Car makers such as Daimler and BMW are connecting old batteries to create large energy storage units in huge halls. If the electric car boom continues, there will be many of these in the years to come. Currently, there's plenty of innovative spirit and creative solutions.
Right now, it's an exciting time for battery technology. You could say that history is almost repeating itself. Just as it did 150 or 200 years ago, everyone wants to develop the most effective battery. Countless researchers are now working on the best battery that can meet the increasing demands.
The race is on, full throttle. The battery of the future will have to meet more and more demands. And it'll have to adapt to new requirements.
They become much more efficient, they become much smaller, and they become better for the environment.
Batteries have spawned new technologies and revolutionized our communication.
The mobile age would not have even started without the battery.
The battery will certainly continue to shape our world. It will give rise to and facilitate future innovations.
We live in a wireless age, and that's definitely going to continue.
The age of the battery has just begun.